Swallows and Amazons by Arthur Ransome. Chapter 17. A Fair Wind. They spent that evening round the campfire making their plans. There would surely be a wind in the morning, but who could tell which way it might blow? A southerly wind would mean one plan, and a northerly wind another. And, supposing there were to be one of those rare winds that made it possible to reach either way up or down the lake, neither of these plans would be much good. But such a wind would be the same for both sides, and it was little good making plans for it. Besides, such winds were very rare. No matter which way the clouds moved over the high hills on each side of the lake, they tended to make the winds blow up or down it. So they made two plans only, one for a southerly wind and one for a northerly. A northerly would make it easy for the Amazons to sail to Wildcat Island. A southerly would make it easy for the swallows to sail to Amazon River. Getting back mattered less. It would not matter how long that took. So there were two plans made. In naval warfare, said John, remembering a well-known book, two things are important: to know exactly what you want to do, and to do it in the manner that your enemy least expects. Well, said Titty, what is it we want to do? We want to get hold of the Amazon when the Amazons are not aboard her, and we have to remember that they will be trying to capture Swallow in the same way. Whoever gets hold of the other one's ship wins. We settled that when they were here. The whole thing is that there's no time to lose. They'll be in a hurry too, so if the wind's from the north tomorrow, they will make an attack on us, and if it's from the south, they will know that we shall make an attack on them. I don't see how we're going to capture Amazon if they come in here for her, said Susan. This is the plan for that, said Captain John. If there's a northerly wind, one of us takes Swallow out and hides her in the reeds where we were fishing. The other three hide on the island in ambush close to the harbour. The Amazons will sail into the harbour and land and go to the camp. While they're at the camp, we shall take the Amazon and they'll be marooned and we shall have won. That's simple enough. And if it's a southerly wind, said Titty? Then it'll be more difficult, for then they'll be expecting us and they'll probably have a good plan of their own. I don't see how we can surprise them, said Susan. It's more difficult, said Captain John, but we can do it. There's just one thing that we can do that they think we can't do. We can find Wildcat Island in the dark and bring our ship into harbour. They know about the marks, but they don't know that we have made them into leading lights, so they'll be sure that we shall make our attack early enough to get home by daylight. Well, we won't. A cutting-out expedition by day would only fail. The pirates' harbour may be within sight of their house. Stronghold, said Titty. There may be natives all over the place who would give the alarm. We must capture their ship while they are feasting ashore or sleeping off their drunken revels. They had a whole barrel in the boat. They must have tubs and tubs of rum on land. This, then, was the plan for a southerly wind. Swallow was to sail to the islands by Rio as soon as she could, so that they could keep a lookout beyond them, and see if the Amazons sailed out of Amazon River. It would never do for the Amazon to be hiding among the islands, so that the swallows would find her gone when they came to the river. If they did not see her, the swallows would sail on at dusk, into the river, find the boathouse, cut out the Amazon, put aboard a prize crew, Susan, to sail her back, and return to Wildcat Island in the dark. There was to be a lighthouse on Wildcat Island, and the leading lights would be lit to make it safe to bring the ships into the harbour in the dark. Candles will not burn all day, so someone had to stay on the island to light them at the last minute, as well as to look after the lighthouse. That someone was to be Titty. For one thing, Roger could not be left alone, and John and Susan would both be needed for sailing the two ships. For another, Titty longed to have Wildcat Island all to herself, to be a lonely lighthouse keeper, to be Robinson Crusoe, and to feel what really a desert island was like. A blanket would do for a goatskin. So that was settled. The making of a lighthouse had to be left till morning. The only question was, would there be a wind, and which way would it blow? There was a little whittling to be done at night, but it had no effect. John went up to the lookout place and lit a match and held it pointing upwards, but there was not even a flicker in the flame to show where some wind might be coming from. In the morning there was a fog on the lake. They could not see the mainland from the island. When John rode across for milk and a new supply of eggs and butter, Roger, who went with him, hooted like a foghorn. A long, hollow hoot, repeated again and again like a big ship hooting its way through a fog in the channel. Titty, who was very much looking forward to having the island all to herself, went up to the lookout place and whistled Spanish Ladies again and again, looking into the soft white cloud that hid everything but a few yards of water. John and Roger very nearly missed the island on their way back. If it goes on like this, said John, not one of our plans will be any use. But after breakfast, a little ripple showed on the water under the fog. The fog moved and drifted through the trees and began to lift from the lake. Now here, now there, the masses of the hills and the dark patches of the woods on the shores showed through the mist, disappeared and showed again. The wind was southerly. It brought with it light drizzle, but that passed, and then the fog was gone. The wind strengthened and the sun shone. It's a fair wind, said Captain John. Good, said Titty. We must hurry up, said John. We must make sure of being in the islands off Rio before the Amazons can get there. Rations for 3, master mate. Dinner and supper. Come on, able seaman Titty, and you, boy, help me make the lighthouse. Mate Susan set about making rations for the day. She emptied one of the big biscuit boxes, because it would be best to stow all the food in that, so that it would not be in the way on the boat. A biscuit box would fit comfortably under the thwart amidships. Captain John went into his tent and brought out the coil of rope that they had bought in Rio. Then the able seaman and the boy, he went with them to the lookout place. The tree at the lookout place was a very tall pine. All its lower branches were gone, so that it had a long bare trunk, and its first big bough was at a great height above the ground. John tried his arms around it, but it was just not too big at the bottom. Higher up he would be able to swarm it easily enough, he thought. The trouble is, I can't swarm up it if I've got anything in my hands. He tied one end of the rope around his waist and gave the rest of the coil to Titty. Now, he said, you pay the rope out and see that it doesn't catch on anything. Aye, aye, sir, said Titty. Captain John spat on his hands and rubbed them. This did not help much in climbing a rough bark tree like a pine, but it seems to, so it's worth doing. Then he started. It was really not so difficult as it looked. The higher he got, the easier it was, because the trunk was not so thick, and it was easier to get a good grip of it with his legs each time he wanted to move his hands up. Don't stand right underneath, he called down, and Titty moved a yard or 2 away. Don't stand on the rope, Roger, she said. She had a coil of rope on the ground and was paying it out as John climbed. The difficult moments were those when he had to pass one of the places where once upon a time there had been a bough. There was nearly always a sharp piece sticking out where the branch had been. It was easy to pass these sticking out pieces with his arms, but not so easy to get his legs over them. They were strong enough to be awkward, but not strong enough to be used as footholds. At last he came to the big bough. He rested for a moment with his head on a level with it. Then he got a good grip of the bough, let go of the tree with his legs, and swung there. Oh, take care, cried Titty. But as she spoke, John had done what he wanted. He pulled up with his arms and kicked, and got one leg over the bough. A swing and a jerk, and he was sitting astride. It's a fine place for a lookout, said Captain John. I ought to have come up here before. But it's no good having the lantern as high as this. It would be half hidden by the branches hanging down from above. It'll be better further down. The bough itself is a splendid thing to hang the rope over. Let's have more rope, Titty. He hauled up more and more of the rope, unfastened the end that was tied around his waist, and dropped it to the ground on the other side of the bough. Titty grabbed it. Hang on to both ends, called Captain John, and keep them well away from the tree when I come down. Send Roger to get the big lantern. Roger ran off for the lantern. Titty carried the ends of the rope to the edge of the lookout place, so that the rope did not hang near the tree where it might have bothered John in coming down. John, astraddled on the bough, shifted himself until he was close to the main trunk of the tree. Then he got both his legs on the same side of the bough and took a firm grip round the trunk. Then he slipped off the bough and got a grip round the trunk with his legs. After that it was easy enough. He knew better than to slide down, but let himself down bit by bit. First his arms, then his legs. Before he came to the bottom, Roger was back with the lantern. Captain John tied one end of the rope to the handle on the top of the lantern. He tied the other end round the oil box on the bottom of the lantern. Then he hoisted away until the lantern was about 3/4 of the way up to the big bough. Then he looked round. Now, he said, if we make the downfall fast to this bush, it won't hang against the lantern, so there'll be no danger of it burning. Now then, able seaman, you're the lighthouse keeper. Let's see you bring the lantern down, light it, hoist it up again, and make it fast. Here's a box of matches. You can steady the lantern with the other part of the rope. Titty took hold of both parts of the rope, and, paying out one and hauling on the other, she brought the lantern down. The rope slid easily over the bow. Then she hauled open the lantern and lit it, and began hauling it up. "Is that the place for it?" she asked. About a foot higher." "That right?" "Couldn't be better. Now, let's see you make it fast." Titty made fast the part of the rope that went over the bow to a little bush at the side of the lookout place, so that it was well out of the way. The other part, from the bottom of the lantern, she fastened around the trunk of the tree, so that the lantern hung straight. The spare rope lay on the ground between the tree and the bush. "Fine," said Captain John. "Lower away and put it out." "Aye, aye, sir." "Well, that's that," said Captain John. "Light up the lantern for the lighthouse and hoist it up just as soon as it begins to get dark. But it's no good lighting the candle lanterns on the harbour marks until we're close to. Besides, you'll want those in camp. You'd better not put them on the marks until you hear us give the owl call. Then you'll know it's us and not an enemy. I say, Titty, do you really think you can manage by yourself?" "Of course I can. But do hurry up, or they might slip past you in the islands, and I couldn't manage both the Amazons by myself." "They would have had time with the wind against them," said John. "But we ought to get away at once." "Come along," said the boy, and they went back to camp. "Rations all ready, sir," said Mate Susan. "I'm taking a big bottle of milk for us. We'll put it in the bilge to keep it cool, and I'm leaving a small bottle for the able seaman. She'll be making tea for herself. Mind you don't let the fire go out, Titty," she added. "If you want to go to sleep, you cover it up with earth, like charcoal burners. It'll be cold at night." "I'm not going to sleep," said Titty. "I shall watch by the campfire, shrouded in my cloak." "Roger," said Mate Susan. "Go into your tent and put on 2 pairs of everything." "Everything?" said Roger. "Everything," said the mate. 2 vests, 2 pairs of drawers, 2 shirts, 2 pairs of knickerbockers, 2 pairs of stockings." "I can't put on 2 pairs of shoes," said Roger. "You won't have to. March. Put on 2 of everything else. Pretend you're going to the North Pole." "2 ties?" said Roger, going into the tent. "Oh, jolly well, Buck-up," said the captain. "There's no time to lose." He went off with Titty to step down the mast and get the sail ready. Susan came down to the landing place with the stores. "Isn't it a good thing we haven't got a centreboard like the Amazon?" she said, as she pushed the biscuit tin under the thwart. "A centreboard's all right when you're sailing against the wind in a narrow place," said the captain, "but Swallow does very well without, and centreboards do take up a lot of room." Susan went back for the milk. She brought both bottles, the big and the little. "Look here, Titty," she said. "I'm putting your bottle in the water here to keep it cool. Don't go and forget where it is." Just then the boy Roger strutted down to the landing place. He was as round as a football, and his arms stuck out stiffly at each side. The captain and the able seaman both laughed, but the mate looked at him critically. "He ought to be warm enough like that," she said, "but we'll take a lot of blankets as well, just in case." She ran up to the tents for the last time and came back laden with blankets. "Well, have we got everything?" asked Captain John. "I've got the compass. What about your torches?" "I've got mine." "Mine's in my pocket," said Susan. "I've got mine," said the boy, "but I can't get at it. It's in the pocket of my underneath shirt." "Ah, never mind," said Captain John. "We'll get it out when we want it." "Then there's the telescope." "Oughtn't I to have the telescope? For keeping watch?" said Titty. John thought for a moment. "Yes," he said, "I think you ought." He handed it over. He took a last look over the ship. "All aboard," he said, and the mate and the boy climbed in and went to the stern. The captain pushed, and as the Swallow floated off, he set a knee to her bows and a moment later was busy with the sail. "You won't forget about the lights, Titty," he called. "Everything may depend on them if it's very dark. Lighthouse soon after dusk, and then when you hear us make owl calls, light the candle lanterns on the harbour marks." "Aye, aye, sir," said Titty. "Swallows forever." In another minute John hoisted up the sail and made fast. He hauled down the boom till the crinkle ran up the sail instead of across it. He made that fast too. They drifted out of the lee of the island. Then the wind caught them. With this fair wind, the whole crew of the Swallow sat together in the stern. The mate was steering. The boom was well out on the starboard side, and the little ship with her brown sails slipped swiftly away in the sunshine. "Hurrah!" shouted Titty, running up to the lookout place and standing under the tree that was now a lighthouse. "Hurrah! Hurrah!" came back over the water from Swallow. The able seaman watched them with the telescope until the brown sail disappeared behind the peak of Darien. Then she became Robinson Crusoe and went down to the camp to take command of her island.